Hey guys, so I'm here today to do an ARC review of a book called Fool Me Once by Ashley Winstead. So first of all, I would like to thank Edelweiss and the publisher for giving me a copy of this for free for my honest and fair view. And this is gonna be some review, guys, because I have a lot of thoughts and feelings about this book. I rated it when I first put it on Goodreads and Storygraph 4 and 4.5 stars respectively, but I have been having so many feelings about this book that I actually asked Michaela to read it because I've just been like rethinking so much of it since I read it. I wanted to tell you first up that I really enjoyed it, but I have some questions, and it's definitely something that I took a chance on. And I don't know, I guess you'll have to see for yourself whether or not you are interested in taking a chance on it. So here is the major thing. This is a story about Lee Stone. Lee is a communications director for the first female-led green electric car company in, I think, the United States, but in particular, this company is situated in Texas. So she works for the female Elon Musk, essentially. Her goal, she's very, very politically active. And so she is trying to not only get her company to outpass Elon Musk's Tesla company, but she is also trying to get this bill passed in Texas called Green Machine. And this would make Texas the leader in climate change legislation in the United States. So Texas is a very red state, she is a Democrat, and so she knows that she has an uphill battle ahead of her, but this is her like entire life's dream. Now, before you go off and think that maybe Lee is a very uptight, has her stuff together, that is not Lee. Outside of work, she has like almost a double life going on. When she's at work, she tries to be her most utter professional self, but off work, she is part of a friend group that calls her Stoner. She does weed, she drinks a lot, she parties really hard, and essentially just outside of work does not have her life together. But it looks like there's this new governor in Texas, and while he is a Republican, he's a moderate Republican, and he's interested in working with this car company called Lease. But what he does is he brings in a new consultant from Silicon Valley to help him pass this bill. And this person happens to be Lee's ex from 5 years ago. His name is Ben, and their relationship didn't just go up in flames. Lee put like TNT in it and exploded it. So this is something that you know going into it, because on the description, the book flap, however you are encountering this book, you know that Lee, at the end of her relationship with Ben, she thought Ben was cheating on her. It turns out he wasn't, but she only found that out after she had revenge cheated on him with his rival in law school and showed up at a party and basically exploded his life. So again, that's not a spoiler, but it is something I think when I picked this book up for the first time, I like maybe didn't internalize, because it becomes so hard for me, especially in the beginning of the book, to want to like Lee. And this is where I feel like this book, discussing it requires a lot of nuance, because this is a very deep character study into the trauma of Lee's life and the things that have led her. She has what she calls 4 major heartbreaks, and the first 3 are her dad cheating on her mom and leaving, and then 2 of her major first boyfriends, not in a row, but cheating on her, sometimes in a very public fashion. And then the 4th heartbreak is Ben. So there's a history, there's a lot of psychological trauma from throughout Leah's life that has led her to make this decision, and all of that is explored. But again, one of the major things about this book is that you have to be willing to go into it and be willing to sympathize with Lee, even though there has been cheating involved in the past. And you have to want her and Ben to get back together, even though she like, she didn't just cheat on him, like, she just piled that up into an absolute explosion of awful. And that's kind of what Lee does. She self-destructs when she thinks things are too good, or just because she wants to. So that's a really big part of this book, and it made me just really, really uneasy, especially when Ben is introduced and they're trying to, you know, start working together, and they just don't know how to handle it. And as opposed to a second chance romance where there has been a bad breakup, or oftentimes, you know, someone did break someone's heart, but there's not cheating involved, I honestly, from the beginning, was really resistant to them getting like closer. I don't know, I just wasn't feeling it. As the book goes on, you know, Lee and Ben find that they really do make an incredible, you know, power couple politically, working for this bill in Texas, and they find out more about each other. And both of them in the last 5 years, well, Ben has really taken the last 5 years to grow and really work on himself, and, you know, what does he want, how does he want to get there. And Lee, there is this belief that she's kind of been a little bit in stasis, really just focusing on the green machine bill and doing that, but really otherwise having no goal in her life. And again, this is something where, like, there's a lot of talk about trauma and mental health, and it's a very nuanced discussion within the book, but I also just, you know, the kind of dynamic where the woman is a screw up and the guy's got it all together and he's trying to help her like get it together is not my favorite dynamic. I've talked about that in the past, but in this case I feel like it did work. But again, I didn't like that Ben had to do a lot of that emotional work for her. I kept reading because I knew I wanted to do this review, and as we get closer and closer to the end, there are some definite themes that are actually just said by some of the characters. So for example, Lee and her little sister are having a rom-com movie night, and Lee turns to her sister and says, you know, why are all of these rom-coms about women who deserve a happy ending? Where is the happy ending for people who have made mistakes and messed up? And I feel like that is the point of this book. Ashley Winstead is writing a book where the main character is supposed to be, and it is a main character because it's not dual POV, it's just Lee's. The main character is morally gray, and she has made not just, you know, tiny mistakes, but terrible mistakes. And she has messed up other people's lives, she has messed up her own life, and she has dealt damage. And I think, again, the point is that, you know, these people too deserve second chances and happy endings. You just have to be willing, I think, to go along with the story. And there is a really great point also at which Ben tells her, you know, after Lee starts to work on herself, like, I'm glad that you're working on yourself, but like, the emotional damage that you dealt is still damage dealt. And so again, the end of the book, I feel like, does a lot of discussion about, you know, trauma and how you deal with trauma, and the fact that just because you are working on yourself doesn't mean that the things that you've done in the past to other people immediately evaporate, which was great, and I'm glad that I got there in the story. And just in general, the book, after the really rocky beginning, gets hilarious. Like, I've talked before about how I don't really normally like laugh out loud, and so when I find a book that does that, it's very interesting to me. This book, absolutely, as I was going through it, there were multiple points where I laughed out loud. And there's also a really strong supporting cast of characters. While a lot of this book is focused on Lee's emotional journey, there are things with her best friend group that are going on, with her sister, with her mother. There's generational trauma in here. You know, there's friends at different points in their life. And, you know, what are we willing to risk for love? So, as I'm getting into the back end of the book, I'm like, okay, I'm glad that I stuck it out through this book. It's really, really great. And then with the ending, which I'm not going to spoil for you. I'm not going to tell you what happens. There are some twists that are fairly telegraphed throughout the book. When Lee was like, oh my god, really? I was like, seriously? I saw this like several chapters ago, so that wasn't great. But then it's a very clean ending, and it won't surprise you that as a romance novel, it has a happy ending. But I felt like with some of the things that happen with the ending, it undercuts some of the really nuanced discussion that it had had previously about, you know, damage that you do to other people is like a plate, right? If you break the plate, you can say you're sorry, but the plate is still broken. And there was such a great discussion about that. And then all of these hurts that have been dealt throughout the book kind of tie off really neatly at the end. And I'm very conflicted about it because I wanted to have a happy ending. This book was clearly saying that people like Lee deserve a happy ending. But I felt like the discussion was kind of all over the place. So I really just need y'all to read this book. I do recommend it if you can get past, like I said, the bit about Lee being a cheater, which I know for some people is a complete no-go. It's also not shown in the book, it's just mentioned. Carrying on. But I've actually asked Michaela to read this book so we can do a larger discussion with it, because I love so much about this book, but as a complete package, I'm unsure. And I feel like in order to really explain this book, and it's a very like context specific book, you know, I can tell you Lee cheats, blah, blah, but like there's so much nuance I think in this book that you really need to be able to have that discussion about its specific context to be able to properly look at it critically. So again, this book made me laugh, but I have questions. So again, go read it, come back, let me know what you think. This book comes out in 2 weeks. So if your library does that thing where you can request books early, get yourself on a list, just literally just for me, because I feel like this book is doing really important work and saying important things, but I don't know how well it's saying it. This review has gone on for longer than I meant to, but I hope I've at least piqued your interest so that you might check it out if it's just from the library or from your local bookstore. And I'm very, very interested in if Ashley Winstead does more romance novels. I believe she's written other books that are not in the genre, so I don't know if this is something that she will return to, but I hope she does, because it was at the very least different. So thank you for that. Thank you to Edelweiss and the publisher for this arc, and have a great day, guys. Bye.